All right. You can sit right up front.
We only call on people in the back.
That's right. We do only call on people in the back. All right. Well, thank you guys for those of you who joined us today, because I know that there's school districts that are on delay. I know that it's snowing outside. I know I didn't wear the right shoes. So it is what it is, but it's another exciting week because, I mean, we had Super Bowl on top of a holiday, which I guess I have just learned. Mr. Jeremy just shared with me that us girls in the room didn't know that that's actually the new thing, that's going to happen every year.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
That's going to shift the market.
So from now on, Super Bowl back right up against, yes. So, here we are, we're starting to see a massive pickup right out of the gate. It's January. We didn't expect it. We expected it to happen after the holiday, but then all of a sudden, hi. All right, we're just getting volume, which is fine because we're just hanging out for a minute. But so here we were with a ton of activity at the beginning of the year, but as you guys are probably feeling, the interest rates popped up, and with the interest, we're already starting to see mortgage purchase applications slow down. So we might have seen a false start, another kind of recalibration, and then another kickoff. Now we know what spring is like here in the Denver market, and make that as soon as we get our volume going. We good, Mr. Peter Ruth?
Where'd it actually go? You guys started Zoom and Facebook?
Starting Facebook now.
Okay, and you went live on Zoom or anything?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so the mastermind that we're putting together, this is brand new, and of course, bringing us together. So the technology is always fun when we're in person because we always learn something new. But the idea of coming together and talking about especially the swift changes that we've been seeing to come out of the gate at the beginning of January, to then have interest rates pop up the way they did, to then see some sort of a pullback in the market, at least with mortgage purchase applications, to be able to communicate that together is so huge, I think, because when you have agents and when you have title reps, lenders coming from different organizations, seeing different things, then being able to share that is so powerful. So Megan, just as a heads up, what are you seeing in the market right now?
I would have liked to have seen more this last weekend.
Yeah.
And so it was still good. I did see a big jump in title orders coming in, but I didn't see as many showings set as we've seen previously the weekend after Super Bowl. And again, we had a shift in our market. And with the Super Bowl going back to back with President's Day weekend, there might be a bigger pickup coming this weekend rather than this last weekend. Usually I end up seeing a bigger jump, about 25 to 30% in terms of total showings that are set the weekend directly following the Super Bowl. But with it being President's Day weekend, a lot of people took that opportunity to go out and spend time with family. Kids were off school. And so there wasn't quite as much showing activity as I would have liked to have seen over President's Day weekend. Our market is also a little bit different than what we've seen in the past in terms of not having quite as many. We're still shallow on listings, but with interest rates being higher and much more volatile, people are really watching what they're able to afford. And so I saw a little bit of a dip of over what we had seen over previous Super Bowl weekends.
So one of the things I always love to start, we're going to invite you to our table. We're just going to invite in. It's always interesting when you get started. So one of the things that I know, I've been talking to a number of real estate agents, and you guys have seen a massive pickup. And what we thought was going to happen in Super Bowl didn't necessarily happen. What we thought was going to happen on the holiday weekend didn't necessarily happen. It seems like the buyers right now are going to kind of throw the old rules out the window. And that's kind of where I got my quote. So my birthday's coming up. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that out loud. So
All right. It's birthday.
It's very close. So we're going to New York City. Peter and I are this weekend, and I'm able to see. I am a Peloton freak. So I'm a workout freak, but I'm a Peloton freak, and Allie Love has me dialed in. Like, she is I am her, well, I don't know who's each other's fan, but she doesn't know me yet. She will. She's going to get to know me, and I'm going to make sure of it on Sunday. So this is a quote that I grabbed from her. I'm pretty sure she quoted it from somebody else, but I loved it regardless. And she said, "You cannot beat a river into submission. You have to surrender to its current and use its power as your own." So that's my quote today, because we're seeing this turbulent market. We're seeing turbulence in people are changing brokerages, people are changing careers, people are seeing the volume they're seeing, and then they're not seeing the volume they're seeing. I mean, you could even say, you know, the technology issues with going live and trying to come together, and the snow that's caused it. I mean, all the things. I could go on and list 50 things that would make my life challenging today, that would make me want to go back into bed, pull the covers over my head, and call it a day. But with the changes come opportunity. With the hardship and the struggle and the diversity comes strength. With these opportunities, others that can't prevail will step to the side. And when they do, more opportunity will present. Right now, you're going to go into all the numbers that are going to talk about the fact that, you know, we might see that pendings are down, or we might see that sales are down, or we might see these numbers, but it's not a demand issue. It's a supply issue. And these things will continue to be, and a demand is waning and getting strong as the interest rates wane and get strong. And as that happens, you can't buck the system. You can't change the course of the river. You can't go upstream in the sense of having success. But what you can do is surrender to its current and use its power as your own, and become even stronger in that diversity, so that when clients are looking for an expert in a space, they know clearly it's you, because you've stood up against it.
I like it.
Oh, I love it. Right?
That's good.
So that's, so speaking of, so let's just go ahead. What are you doing this weekend? I'm going to New York. You want to come with me? I can put you in my suitcase.
That'd be nice. I don't know, is it cold there? I'm really tired of cold. So if it's cold there, I'm not going.
Moose tried to get in my suitcase again. That dog is not coming to New York, but you
Oh
can
my
come.
gosh.
It is
that's
supposed to
fun.
be cold.
No, I've
It is
got a
supposed to be
cat all of a sudden. And so there's been this stray cat that's been hanging around my house for the last 2 weeks, living underneath my dad. And finally, with the impending weather, I was like, okay, we've got to get this cat inside at least. And so we've got this new cat that has completely made itself at home. And we are searching all over the lost and found sites, trying to figure out who this cat's owner is. And so I'm probably just hanging out with a cat this weekend. I've got a vet appointment for it at 3 o'clock today. So I'm taking it to the vet.
Take it in.
Yeah, I'm
It's not
taking it
just
to the
under the
vet.
deck anymore.
No, it's in my
Okay.
house. It's in my house and it's making itself completely at home. So if anyone's on the west side of town missing a very large, black, very vocal cat, it is living in my house right now and it's being very well taken care of. So it's very happy and content, but I would love to get it back to its owner because I would hate to take somebody else's cat. So I'm probably hanging out with the cat this weekend, but let's go ahead and get into the numbers. And I'll go ahead and share my screen so that we can get this going. I ended up, there was an update to Microsoft Excel and to PowerPoint. And it was kind of interesting because it, oh gosh, there's all kinds of stuff going on this screen.
Yeah.
So it ended up, so I had to change the way that I embedded the charts and graphs into my PowerPoint presentation, and it changed all of the colors. So if it looks weird this week, I might end up having to go back to the other way that I had it previously, because it looks a little bit weird this week and I couldn't quite figure it out. And it was 4 o'clock in the morning yesterday when I was going through and pulling all of the numbers. So it might just be a little bit funky this time around. So I'm sorry about if that throws you guys off a little bit. But looking at what's been happening with the numbers, why is this not answering? There we go. So this last weekend, looking at our strategy sheets, headed into the end of February, you can see that there was a little bit of a cooling trend. It picked up a little bit, but there were some cooling trends where we ended up seeing a lot more new listings coming into the market. And so a lot of people were trying to time the market just right so that we could get those listings under contract very quickly. And so looking at what ended up happening with our average daily, I'm having a hard time getting going today. Having a hard time.
I'm gonna blame the technology issues and too much coffee.
Yeah, I know, a little bit of both. The average daily active count ended up going down going into last weekend by about 3.1%. We tend to see average daily active counts going down up until about April. And so we expect there to be extremely tight inventory for probably the next 6 weeks or so as people wait to list their homes for market for sale until after spring break. And so there's this really sweet spot in the marketplace where if you want to be on the market sometime between the end of Super Bowl and before spring break for your school district, it creates this compression point in the marketplace where we have more demand in the market than we have homes to service those folks. And so it creates this inversion between the relationship of supply and demand. And now we're back down below 1 month worth of inventory. We're actually sitting at 0.9 months worth of inventory right now. And so when we drop below 1 month worth of inventory, that means that we truly have more buyers in the market than homes to sell those folks. And so it's creating these multiple offers. Now, the multiple offers that we're seeing this year are different than the multiple offers that we saw last year. Last year was chaos. It was absolute chaos, and we needed the market to come down. But last year we were seeing like 25 offers on a house going 8 to 10% over asking price. Whereas this year we're seeing like 3 to 5 offers on homes that are really good, that are staged, that have great photography, that are pre-inspected, that are turnkey homes in great locations that are going under contract in like a median of 6 days. But they're going under contract for like 1 or 2% over asking price. They're not going for that 8 to 10% over asking price like what we saw last year. So what I hope that does is it creates stability in our pricing structure for going into the next couple of months, because we've been losing average sales price over the last 6 or 7 months now in light of affordability issues. Now, with this bolster of average sales price, we could see average sales prices going up again month over month. But what the media is really globbed onto is that average sales prices are down from the same month 1 year ago. They're going to continue to report that probably up until about September, because we don't have the same market conditions that we did a year ago. A year ago, we had 6 days worth of inventory at this point in the marketplace, and everything was going under contract significantly over asking price with appraisal waivers, and it drove our average sales prices up to $820,000 by the time that we hit April. We're not in the same market conditions this year as we were last year, so it's not likely that we're going to hit that same average sales prices. Right now, our average sales price is hovering just under $700,000. And so for us to go from just under $700,000 up to $820,000 again is just not feasible in the current market conditions that we're looking at. I'm hopeful that we'll hit probably 740 or 750 by the time that May rolls around. And so it makes comping really challenging. We kind of have to throw the old rules out of the window, where we were looking at usually just the last 6 months worth of comp activity to try and figure out pricing strategies. Now, what I'm recommending is you go back to that big bump that we saw last spring and looking at pricing from last January to try and compare where we are in terms of average sales price now. But right now, average sales prices are down year over year by about 5 to 8%. And so you have to take that off. So if you look at pricing strategies from last January, maybe adding 1 or 2% is probably what you're going to sell for this year. Our pending count ended up jumping only by 3.9% going from Super Bowl weekend into President's Day weekend. So we put a total of 938 total units under contract. Back on markets fell by about 4%. I've had a lot of people asking about how many units are going under contract, going and then coming back on the market or not following through. And it's probably about an 8 or a 9% fallout rate right now. I had about 25 total title orders come in on Monday, and I called and followed up with all of those folks. And I said, tell me about how long your property was on the market. And it was this real mixed bag. It was either a property that had been hanging out since November or December, finally going under contract, or it was one of those that was a multiple offer situation that was just put on the market last week. So it was kind of all over the board. It was hard to really decipher a trend. But again, those multiple offers that we're seeing were only like 1 or 2% over asking price. So they're not nearly as extreme as what we were seeing last year. We did see a big jump in the number of closed transactions with people trying to move over President's Day weekend. Closed transactions were up week over week by about 18.5%. We usually have the bulk of our closings take place at the end of the month as people are trying to skip an extra monthly mortgage payment. So next week we should see even more closings, but we did see a nice pop in closed transaction, but we're still down by about 23% over where we were 1 year ago in terms of overall closed volume for this particular week. So there's about 20% fewer transactions that are happening this year versus where we were last year. The market is definitely taking a hit in terms of that.
So it is interesting though. So we had more activity than we did Super Bowl weekend. So we are, even though it was a holiday weekend, even though people were skiing, we're seeing the more activity. down from last year because there's just less to sell.
Yes.
Right, and then some buyers are getting hit by the fluctuation of the interest rates, but it's still a strong market. And I'm gonna be really interested in why I'm gonna love doing this mastermind once a month,
Mhm.
is to take a pulse on what you guys are seeing. Because I know I've talked to several of you, and it's interesting, some of it matches up exactly, and some of it is so skewed, but we are seeing more showings, we're definitely seeing interest. We're seeing less number of competitive offers, maybe even one offer, and even that one offer maybe even over asking, just because they're feeling the activity level.
Mhm.
So you have to be in communication so much more now than ever
Yes.
before.
Well, and there seems to be a real disconnect between buyers and sellers right now, where buyers think that it's still the same market conditions that we were in 3 months ago, where they could come in and ask for every inspection resolution item, but they're in multiple offers. And so we're seeing this kind of disconnect where sellers think that we're still working a year ago with the market conditions, but buyers think that we're working like 3 months ago and they can ask for everything under the moon. I've got this real challenge in front of me right now where I'm hearing that there are multiple offers on properties, but they're all under asking price, and I can't track how many contracts were written on a property. There's no way for me to pull that out of like CPME contracts. And so I don't know how to track multiple offers if they're going for under asking price. I can only track them if they're going for over asking price. And so there's this real disconnect there about what's happening in the marketplace. So I'm not quite sure what to do with that information. Our odds of selling did jump up to 61.4%. So if we're looking at the odds of selling, that's basically where I take into account all of the available listings for sale in a week versus those that go under contract and or close in the same week, projected forward for about a 4-week period of time. So if you were to list last weekend, you had about a 61.4% odds of selling it in the next 30-day period of time. And so that number is coming right in line with what we saw from 2013 through 2019. And so I want to see that number bouncing between 60 to 65% in order to get that predictability factor back into the marketplace. And so that number is coming in right where we should be for the month of February if we exclude those pandemic years. So I've been really pleased to see that number coming up. So the odds of selling has gone up, and we bottomed out back over Christmas and New Year's Eve, where it was like 30% odds of selling. So the odds of selling is roughly doubled since we were back in the winter months. Looking at where we are in terms of balance, if we were to create that magical 6-month supply of inventory where we'd be in a market in balance, which is far from anything that we've experienced in a very long time in Metro Denver. 6 months worth of inventory would feel incredibly high. And so usually in Denver, we average about a 3 to 3.5 months worth of inventory, but we would need to be at about 24,500 active listings available in our marketplace. So we'll continue to be in this extremely tight market for a long period of time because we're in interest rate gridlock right now, where a lot of people refinance their homes into 2 and 3%. They don't want to move because they don't want to move into a smaller house for more money. What they're doing is they're pulling out HELOCs and they're renovating and staying in place rather than moving. So we're not seeing this excessive amount of listings making their way to market. Let's see, if I go back, how much were new listings up? New listings were up 9.6% last week, but they're still down 18.5% from where we were 1 year ago. Looking at balance, again, we only have about 14.9% of a balanced market right now. And so this is keeping us from going into a bigger state of foreclosure, short sales, and HUD homes, because people, if they find themselves in a level of distress, they're able to list their home quickly for sale, get it under contract, and walk away with that equity without taking that hit on their credit score. Looking at where we are for showing. So this is one of those graphs that got weird on me. All of the colors changed when I moved this one over to the PowerPoint. So I don't know what's going on with this or why that happened. Everything's kind of a mystery within Excel. I think that I use about 2% of what Excel is capable of doing. But again, this was an anomaly to me. I have no idea why that happened, but I just kind of went with it this week. So hopefully everyone's okay with it. But showings did increase week over week going into President's Day weekend by about 8.6%. Showings are still down from the same week 1 year ago by about 48.3%. So we did see a pop of showing activity, but it wasn't quite the big pop that I was hoping to see, where we see that uptick of 25 to 30%. Again, that could be Super Bowl weekend and President's Day weekend back to back right now. But we were looking at about 3.9 or 4 shows per property per week. So if you're not getting your 4 showings on your properties per week, that could be sign number 1 that you might need to go through and reduce your price. The market is really sped up. significantly over the last 3 to 4 weeks. Again, buyers are being more discerning about what they're looking at and what they're writing offers on. Buyers are definitely out there looking, but they're looking at more homes this year than they were last year. Last year at this time, they were looking at an average of about 10 homes before writing a contract. Right now, they're looking at about 15 homes before writing a contract. So that could be sign number 2, where if you've been on the market and you've had 15 total showings and no offers, that you might need to make a price reduction. Looking at where we were for median days on market came down again by about 15.4%, down to 11 median days on market. The new homes that are making their way to market are the ones that are going under contract. And again, this is a year of skill and not of speed. So it's super important that you're staging your properties, that you're painting those lime green walls, that you're combating those awkward floor plans, going through doing some light renovations on those properties before putting them on the market, because buyers don't want projects right now. They're paying premium prices still at higher interest rates. They don't have the money left over to go through and update these homes. And so they've got to live with them in the condition that they're in for a period of time before they're able to go through and renovate and make those changes to the properties. But it was about 11 median days on market. So if you've been on the market for longer than 11 days, that could be sign number 3 that you need to go through and make a price reduction. Speaking of price reductions were down week over week, down to 31.2% of homes that went under contract last week made a price reduction. What's interesting over holiday weekends is that the size of price reduction tends to go up. And so we ended up seeing a larger price reduction this last week. If a price reduction was made on those 30% of homes, the average price reduction was about 6.1%, or about $42,500 off of their original asking price. I don't know why that happens over holiday weekends. I don't know if it's bargain shoppers that are out there looking that are putting these properties under contract, but there tends to be larger price reductions that are made over these holiday weekends to get these properties under contract. Looking at the under $500,000 market, this only represents about 27.1% of our overall inventory. We're coming into prime listing season, looking at March, April, and May for putting these properties under contract. I really do think that if you can get these properties to market early in March, that you'll be able to draw multiple offers. There's been an excessive amount of demand in the under $500,000 market as home prices have continued to go up. And interest rates have continued to go up. People are finding themselves not able to afford the $750,000 home, but now looking at the $500,000 home. And so there's been more demand in this particular market. Looking at our strategy sheet for this last week, it was fairly active, a couple of cool spots, but our month supply of inventory came down week over week by about 0.6%, it's down to 0.6 months worth of inventory. So at the current rate of sales, we'll sell out of the existing inventory in about 16 or 17 days at this current market rate. There are only about 935 average daily active units, and that was down 7.5% week over week. Pendings actually fell in this particular price range, which was interesting to see. I would have expected to see more of these properties going under contract this week, but pending transaction count fell by 3.9% this last week, and it's down by about 13.7% from where we were 1 year ago. New listings making their way to market increased by about 13.5%, which is interesting because our average daily active count fell this week, even though we had so many more new listings making their way to market. Again, it's those new listings that are getting picked up quickly and going under contract, while stale inventory is just kind of hanging out. The odds of selling for homes that were up to $500,000 jumped up to almost 70%. This is close to where we were back in 2020. So this market really has picked up pretty significantly. We're not back to where we were during the pandemic years, where that number spiked up to nearly 90% odds of selling, but 70% odds of selling for the under $500,000 market. I'll take it. I think that that's a really solid number going into the spring months. Looking at where we are in terms of balance, we are only at 9.8% of balance in this under $500,000 market, meaning that we're probably going to see more multiple offers in this market than we are at higher price points where people become more dependent on loans. Looking at shows per property per week, they increased 17% this last week, with fewer homes in the market and total showing count going up by about 8.2%. We had about 5,700 total showings that were set in this particular price point last week. And so that means that you were getting about 6.2 shows per property per week. So again, gauging that where you are in terms of how many showings you should be getting on a weekly basis, you should be getting about 6.2 shows per property per week. People were looking at about 16 homes before going under contract in this under $500,000 mark. And so if you've been on the market and you've had 16 total showings and no offers, it may be time to make a price reduction. Median days on market dropped by 21.7% in this market, down to 9 median days on market. It's still not the 4 that we were seeing last week, but 9 median days on market is still a very fast market. Things are getting snapped up very quickly. I had an interesting question that got fired over to me from Nicole. Last week I made the comment, there's about 3,000 total homes that are available for sale in the market that it seems like nobody wants, that are just kind of hanging out, that are not great houses that people don't want to put under contract.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through and look at the active inventory and see how long the average active count has been on the market versus those that are going under contract to see what that aging inventory looks like.
So that we really know. Like it's
So that
not.
we really know. Because again,
just
it
feels like it,
feels like the new listings are the ones going under contract versus those that went on the market back in November and December. The longer a home spends on the market, buyers are like, why is this home been on the market for a month? What's wrong with it? And it creates a stigma for the longer amount of time it's been on the market. So you may even consider pulling that listing from market for a 30-day period of time to reset your average days on market back to 0 and relisting it back in March. Going into March, whatever your school district is when you want to avoid spring break. Spring break is not a big time for real estate. People tend to take that week off. They're out of town, they're on vacation. And we end up seeing in the beginning of April, our listing count goes up because also over spring break, people take that week off to get their home ready for the spring market. And we start to see new listing activity going up as we get into April. Looking at price reductions in this price range, it went down by 5.2% for pending transactions. It was 28.5% of what went under contract in the under $500,000 market made price reductions. We're looking at about a 5.6% price reduction. We talked for a long time before we got started today. It's only 10:27. And I'm only sometimes a price fan.
I know.
Looking at 500 to $1 million, this is really the heartbeat of what our market is in Metro Denver, where it creates about 62% of the overall market activity. Our average daily active count in this market went down by 1.9%. New listing activity was up by about 10% this last week, but it's still down 25.7% from where we were 1 year ago. Our pending transactions increased this last week by 9.2%. I would have liked to have seen that number around the 20% mark, but we'll see what happens this next weekend after we get out of President's Day weekend. The odds of selling healthy, 60.4% for overall market activity. We only have 15.8% of a balanced market in this market. So again, it's well insulated from any sort of larger, more widespread market correction. We're looking at about 3.4 shows per property per week. So again, if you're not getting your 3.4 shows per property per week, you may not be in your target market range. We're looking at about 14 shows per to go under contract. So if you've had 14 showings and no offers, that may be the sign that you need to make a price reduction. Days on market are a little bit longer in this price range. This is our most interest rate sensitive category, and interest rates have definitely been volatile over the last 2 weeks. And so people are looking at how much they can afford on a weekly basis. But days on market was sitting at about 15 average median days on market. So if you've been on the market for longer than 15 days, maybe time to go through and make a price reduction. Price reductions were a little bit larger in this price range. We're looking at about 34.5% making price reductions, and the average price reduction was about 6.2%, or about $45,000 or $46,000 off of the original price. I did have a conversation with one client who went under contract last week. Earnest money didn't show up, so the contract immediately terminated. And she said, we're probably going to go through and make a price reduction this week, and a really large one. And the home price was $900,000. And so I was like, well, how big of a price reduction are you going to make? She said, oh, about $25,000. And I was like, that's not quite enough to get it back down into the next searching tier. You might need to consider a larger price reduction than that in order to get it under contract. But we're looking at nearly a $50,000 price reduction in order to get it under contract at that point. Looking at 1 to 1.5 million, this is 7.6%.
Do you think that primarily because it was under contract and off, or that it lost a weekend and now it's been on the market? Like, why does she need to do a price reduction? What are you seeing?
So I think it had been on the market for a long period of time,
Already.
and that it went under contract for less than ask. Yes. And so the market was kind of dictating to her that this is what fair market value was going to be by having that offer come in at under asking price. And so she's considering a price reduction for this weekend. Looking at where we were in terms of our average daily active count, there were only 308 total properties on the market. That actually increased week over week by about 6.2%, but new listings were down by 15.9% this weekend. So we had a lot of conversations in the previous weeks coming up into Super Bowl and into President's Day weekend about not listing luxury property over a holiday weekend, because they're the ones that are more likely to be up in the mountains skiing over these weekends. And so people heeded that warning and they didn't list over President's Day weekend. We'll see if this number ends up going up into the next week. I hope that we start to see more new listings making their way to market, but our pending transaction count fell by about 4.3%, making our predicted month supply of inventory 1.6 months worth of inventory. So that means for every one buyer in the market, they've got about 1.6 homes to choose from. So the odds of selling ended up falling this last week by about 4%. So it was about a 48.8% odds of selling. That puts us back into 2020 numbers in terms of what we were looking at historically in terms of a similar market. We still only have 17.5% of a balanced market, so no large widespread market correction going on. Showings did go up this last week by about 4.5%. We had 927 total showings that were set in this market. So it means that you should have had 3 showings on your property last week for 1 to 1.5 million. We had a lot of looky-loos. And people were out there looking at properties, but they weren't putting them under contract. And the number of showings to go under contract jumped way up this last week, up to 21 showings to go under contract. So these buyers are being much more discerning about what they put under contract in this $1 to $1.5 million price range right now. But the homes that were new and that were listed last weekend were the ones that were going under contract because median days on market was only 8 for this particular price range. And so again, it's those new listings that are getting sucked up and going under contract, and that aging inventory is the stuff that's just hanging out there, making our average days on market go up. Only 16.3% of them reduced their price, and the average price reduction was about 8.4%, or about $109,000 off of the original price for a price reduction. Last price range we'll talk about is 1.5 to 2 million. This is 2.8% of our overall inventory. Looking at this market, we ended up seeing that there were an average daily active count went up by about 6.5% with 132 total listings available for sale. New listings increased week over week by 61.9%, which was a huge jump. And so we had 34 new listings make their way to market. Coming soons are up 85.7%. So there's even more inventory that's going to make its way to market this week. But the pending transaction count jumped by 15.4% over where we were the previous week over Super Bowl weekend. We put 15 units under contract between $1.5 to $2 million. So there was more activity in this price range. The odds of selling is still slightly anemic. I'd like to see this number higher, but it was about a 39.8% odds of selling. I would love to see that number hit about 45% odds of selling as we go into the next couple of weeks. We only have 16.9% of a balanced market. We're looking at about 2 shows per property per week in this market. About 16 showings to go under contract. Median days on market for this price range was only 6. So again, it's those new listings that are going under contract. It's the aging inventory that nobody wants, that's just sitting out there and not going under contract. We only saw that 26.7% of what went under contract last week made a price reduction, and the price reduction was about 10.9%, or about $237,000 off of the original asking price, which were really big price reductions that we ended up seeing this last week. We'll stop the share. We'll go ahead and we'll answer any questions. We've got about 10 questions that are just hanging out there. And so a big, long question. So a client sent me a stat showing that the mortgage applications dropped to an index level of 147, which is lower than the 2008 crash. And he expects the home prices to follow this index. Is there a mortgage index for the local market we can follow? What is our current application rate and how does it compare to the market in 2008?
It would take a lot. So we actually do You can look at it a month or two later. There are a couple of data aggregators that will show you by state. It's not going to get too metro specific as far as the applications, because if I do an application here, but they'll know that the application was for Colorado or it was for Utah. They might not know it was for, one county or another. But that data is going to come later than what we see on a weekly basis nationally. But it went way down.
I've got people asking me how the cat's doing. So the cat is doing very well.
I need a cat. Do
you want a cat?
No, I don't. Do you want a cat?
I have two dogs that would torture it.
Oh, gosh. Well, the dog, so I have a dog. This cat outweighs my dog by a solid 12 pounds. Like the cat and the dog were both sleeping on the couch today, so they're getting along with each other just fine. They're just staying out of each other's way and they don't really care. And so it's really kind of amazing. I mean, this cat is a good cat. If I end up having this cat, it meows a lot. It's really loud. And so you keep talking about multiple offers. What actual percentage of homes are getting multiple offers? So I measure that on a monthly basis, not on a weekly basis. And so I would say that of the people that I polled that went under contract this last weekend, it was about 30% of them had told me that they were getting multiple offers on their property. Based off of closings from last month, which was more likely under contract in December, it was about 20% of them were getting multiple offers at that point. And so we've seen fewer multiple offers this year than what we saw last year. Last year, we were seeing that it was like 60 to 70% were getting multiple offers. So they're definitely down.
And the next question was just about the renovation loans. So, with any homes that are on the market, and you should absolutely be having this conversation. I had a great conversation with an agent who's under contract on a duplex, and the appraisal came in low. So her first question was, well, can I do a renovation loan? Can I roll in costs? Can I increase the value? And then can we purchase the price based on a new appraised value that's higher? And interestingly enough, so I'm not the lender on this one. We spent about an hour on the phone last night. And by the time we were done, she's like, and you're going to be my first call next time. I was like, but this is what I do. Like, if you guys run into a problem that seems unsolvable, based on the fact that she had locked in an interest rate a week and a half ago, I told her she couldn't come over to me. Not in good conscience could I ask her to do that, but that we could fix the problem where it was at. So based on the appraisal coming in low versus having to do a new appraisal, I said, well, what if you negotiated? You said you had an appraisal gap up to this. It came in lower than that. Can the seller come down a little bit more? Based on it being a duplex, you have an 85% loan to value maximum. So figuring out what that number is, keeping the same interest rate, the amount you come to the closing table with is less than the difference. People think, well, I have to bring that much different to the closing table, and you don't. Because of leverage, it's a percentage. So we could negotiate a place where she felt good, she thought the seller would feel good, she kept the interest rate, and it's going to be able to close a deal even with a low appraisal. But some of these deals do need a renovation loan. And so they don't have renovation loans for jumbos, but you can get a renovation loan for anything else, for FHA, VA, and conventional, as long as you stay within the conforming loan limit. And they only take an extra week or two because of the whole contractor.
What is the conforming loan limit right now?
So why would you ask me that? So we're right under 800,000.
Okay, that's a pretty good house.
Yes.
That's a pretty good house.
Yeah.
Questions about, for those of us without kids, the most common spring break of the year.
Yes.
All the schools seem to vary throughout the month. Most common two spring break weeks are the last 2 weeks in March. I know my kids are on break the last week of March for private school, but I think that it varies between the third week in March and the last week in March.
Megan, I seem to recall you saying previously that we shouldn't list a property the weekend before a break because people are getting ready for it.
So there's actually more market activity the week before spring break than there is the week after spring break.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Are the 2-1 buy downs still happening? I would say that as interest rates are jumping up, they are 100%. Right now, we're right under 7% again. And we're still seeing a lot of market fluctuation. This is a conversation that you should be having. But last week or the week after, we talked about the fact that the actual closed loans that were doing the temporary buy downs versus the permanent buy downs many more people are doing the permanent buy downs. Very few, like 3% are actually doing the temporary buy downs. For all the talk and conversation, just when you run the numbers, you're like, well, what if rates don't go down as quickly as I think? Or what if it doesn't make as big a difference to me? Or what if my life changes? So locking in that interest rate, and because the market is so skewed right now, and there's no investor that wants to buy a single loan when it comes in at 7% or 7.5% or even 6.5%, because they know all of those loans will be refinanced. So it's a very short-term, long-term bond. It's an awful investment. And so there's no investors for it. So what you end up having is the fact that you can actually get down to the lower interest rate for less money than you think. So if you're not having that conversation on every single deal when you're going in to put an offer, what do these numbers look like with a temporary buy down versus a permanent buy down? How do I structure it the best for my client and put them into that most secure situation? Then you should be having those conversations on every single deal, because of course it changes with the market movement.
Hey, you're in the room. Why didn't you just raise your hand instead of putting your question online? So Kate's question, I have an upcoming listing where my seller will likely need a 2-week post-closing occupancy agreement. Can anyone share if they've been able to still secure a PCOA for their sellers lately, or is it now just a huge turnoff for buyers and buyers just don't want to do it? So I'm going to turn that over to the room. What are you guys seeing out there for post-closing occupancy?
I'll say, I mean, I've definitely seen people needing them, and my client, it works for her. She's had knee surgery. She'd prefer to move in around April if ideal for her. So she can give that, and a lot of people aren't willing to. So that strengthens her as a buyer, but I've definitely seen that. Yes.
I can say I just put an offer and it was in multiples, like they had 7 offers and everyone offered a post occupancy. Because that's what made their offer more competitive. So I think it really depends, you know, if you're attracting those multiple offers or not.
But everyone did it.
Everyone did.
It wasn't competitive at all.
No.
It
No,
was
everyone did. It was,
Yeah.
it turned to be standard and it was like, okay.
Do you know, were they all free or?
So it was mixed charging, and then when it came down to it, everyone ended up giving a free one.
What price
Well, let's-
point was that in?
This was 700.
Let's keep going on this though.
So.
We'll bring it back to the room and mastermind, which is why I'm starting to dig this.
So 500 to $1 million price range represents 63% of the market. Yes, it still does. I know skill over speed in this market is important, but with low inventory, it's better to do coming soon and then live, or just market when ready for the 500,000 plus price range. I have no way of measuring if a coming soon it makes sense or if it doesn't, because I can't tell if it changes average days on market or not when you pre-market a property like that. So I honestly have no idea what impact doing coming soon ends up doing.
Tara's the one that did the conversation last night. So
Mhm.
you're welcome, Tara.
Mhm.
All right. Go ahead. I'll let you-
Do you have any concerns over listing on St. Patty's Day weekend, or is it not as much as over holiday weekend?
Holiday.
It is,
That's a
so it's on a
party.
Friday. So it's on a Friday, so it's not a good
Yeah.
impact the market, but it's not a day off. And so it's not, I don't think that it's going to be, well, I'm getting funny looks from Peter in the back about it not being a day off.
I'm definitely taking.
I know.
We do car bombs here. We're not taking the day off. So. You guys want to come in the office, we'll be doing car bombs.
So it could, since it falls on a Friday where people are not wanting to go out on Saturday and look for homes.
Because they're hungover.
Because they're hungover. But
That's gotta be, if that's your client
It's
base.
gotta be a Friday.
If that's your client base, rethink your business.
And so we're getting a lot of feedback that some people were able to secure PCOAs. And so the last question, and then we're running way behind. Everyone is waiting for rates to drop. Is it possible that rates won't go down for an extended period of time?
You know, it is define extended, right? So we were all super thankful and I was with them. I mean, I was watching the trends and we were watching where the inflation was going and feeling like the market had baked in the appropriate amount of risk and information. And that wasn't the case. They were over celebrating, right? And so when some of it gets pulled back, the markets reshift and we see this sling back approach, which we're having right now, where the interest rates are jumping back up again. And it will correct, but it's just when and how long. All right, so I'm gonna, I always do this backwards whenever we're together. All right, I'm gonna share my screen really quickly and we're gonna run through this. And I'm a little We're gonna have to fly through some of this. We'll talk about more of it when we're doing our mastermind. And guys, if you're online and you want to come join us for the mastermind, I know we sold out our spaces, if you will, pretty quickly. I know we have a few extra chairs, the snow definitely, and the long delay of some school districts had people calling me this morning. But if you want to, there's a QR code at the end for those of you in the room. You might want to have your phones at the end of this presentation. For those of you online, definitely make sure that if you do want to come in for the mastermind next month, we're just doing it on a first come, first serve, and it's limited to the 50. So let's just start talking about what's happening in the market. This is all over the news, right? The interest rates dropped. Oh, I'm sorry, the interest rate jumped. I can't get this to move over. I'm not gonna call Peter. That's my go-to.
Just maximize it.
Maximize it here. Okay. I couldn't see my slide deck here. I could do the presentation this way, but it wouldn't be as effective. So interest rates did jump, right? So they jumped to the highest level since November. So we're just under 7%. So then the question is it going to go much higher? And I don't think we're done. Like, I think that hopefully we'll just stay volatile here. We're bouncing right underneath the 4% 10-year coupon rate. And so if that jumps above 4%, if you remember back in November, that was the, oh shit, hang on to your shirts kind of moment when it crossed over and it kept going above 4%. Now, it wasn't really over 7.25 for that long. And I think some of this is an overreaction just as much as it was an overreaction the other way. But as we're watching that, we did see interest rates go up. So having the conversation, what does this help you to afford right now? What does this limit you to afford right now? Do we get you under contract, but do we wait? Do we talk about the 2-1 buy down? Do we talk about a permanent buy down? Do you wait? But do you? Like, so whenever I'm listening to you talking about how much demand there is based on the supply, we're running at below a month of inventory.
Mhm.
So you can say the absolute supply is lower than it was last year. You can say the absolute demand is lower than it's been in decades, but it's an irrelevant conversation when the two together, the demand and the supply, are matching to a point to where you have less than 1 month of inventory.
Mhm.
In a market that's extremely stable,
Mhm.
in the sense that nobody's selling their homes and nobody's foreclosing or short selling their homes. So do you wait becomes a matter of, are you okay affording more? Because it's not going to get cheaper here. This idea that the prices are going to go down significantly, right? So plus or minus, you're -2 on +2. We're going to split the difference and we're going to have a flat year. So in all of that, waiting is only going to cost you more on the purchase price as demand filters in. Now, I've been talking to some investors who are asking me, should I wait? Because interest rates will be lower, more than likely, the second half of this year. And if we're going to have a flatter year and you have some opportunities to have greater cash flow, then maybe as an investor to find that property that cash flows, you might want to wait because you don't care as much about location or the number of bedrooms up or the school districts it's in.
Mhm.
But when you find the home that works for you, locking it into an interest rate, knowing that in the next 6 to 18 months, you're going to have the opportunity to refinance, it seems like a pretty low risk to me, right? But I'm in it all day, every day.
Mhm.
But that's the conversation that we have to get passionate about as we're sharing. So mortgage purchase applications were down, the lowest they've been since 1995. So that's a really long time. They were down 18%. And that's what I was feeling when I saw the report. So it's happening. The buyer applications are down. But again, it's relative. To say that it's down from an absolute perspective, it is. But if there's enough buyers to capture the supply, then there's enough buyers. I don't need 18% more applications, because all it's going to do is further propagate multiple bids, which is going to further propagate higher prices, which is going to further reduce our affordability. So it's okay.
Mhm.
So that's the bottom line. It's okay.
Mhm.
So stay calm, enjoy, and then just help your clients get under contract quickly. So the 10-year is trying to break across the 4% line. So as soon as it does, I will be sending out an announcement for sure. But the Fed meeting minutes just kept harping on the fact that we're going to stay higher for longer. We're going to stay higher for longer. I think that phrase was repeated multiple times during the Fed meeting minutes that were just released this week. That in turn created higher for longer mortgage rates, because everybody's like, he's serious. So all of a sudden the bond market is going, I'm taking this seriously. Like the bond market was increasing. We saw our coupon rate increase. We saw our interest rates increase. But the stock market's not buying it quite yet. right? But the bond market is absolutely going. It's going to be the end of the year before we see any kind of reduction in the Fed rate. The biggest thing is the fact that even though wages are starting to slow down, they're still going up and they're still lower than inflation. So we're still not capturing, and that's the big thing that Powell keeps watching, is it happening where wages are now stronger than inflation, and consumption keeps happening. So the real consumption is more than the income. Stop spending like for like 30 days, maybe, you know what, I'd actually like 90. Stop spending for 90 days. Let's get a whole quarter of this, right? Let's just slow down. The fact that our retail sales were up 3%, the fact that department stores were up 18%, nobody goes to Macy's anymore. I don't understand that. Yet we keep spending. As long as we keep spending and wages aren't keeping up with inflation, the Fed is going to have to keep increasing the Fed rate. Jobless came in low again. So we're below 200,000 for 6 straight weeks. All those people that we're hearing about, all the layoffs, I don't know if you guys are in touch, but there's massive layoffs and closures going on in the mortgage industry right now. There's a lot of people that aren't able to keep up with this low volume. So as these big banks shove out their retail branches or their wholesale branches, or as companies either merge or close down, and then of course all the technology, we're seeing these people, they're not going on unemployment. They're simply hanging on. They're either getting a buyout when they leave, or they're simply finding new jobs right away. There's still 2 jobs for every person. So I'm not going to read this. We'll have our slide deck. But really what Fannie Mae is saying is that we're continuing to see strength in employment. We're continuing to see strength in retail sales. We're continuing to see strength in manufacturing. All of those are supporting this inability to see inflation drop. And as soon as inflation drops, we get to see the mortgage interest rates drop, and we get to see a recovery, a more fuller, broader recovery in the housing market. There are those buyers who really don't care, and they're buying anyway, and they should be, because those home prices will only be more, and we'll see more demand. The demand that's going to come out when the interest rates drop will be considerable. And we're going to talk about this in the mastermind, because you guys are seeing a lot of showings. How many offers are you seeing to your showings? How many offers above asking, or how far over asking? I mean, are we really tipping to that side of the fence yet? Or are we just starting to see a lot more activity? That activity is going to turn into a lot more offers and a lot higher over asking when we see more demand coming in. So the market's now pricing in 3 more 25 bip increases. We thought at the end of the year we might see 2. We've already had 1. Now they're adding 3 more. So as this Fed rate goes up, remember, as the Fed rate goes up, it doesn't mean our interest rates, our mortgage interest rates are going to go up with it. Right now it is, because of everything else that's happening in the market. But as it goes up, if it can control inflation, we'll actually see our interest rates drop before the Fed rate drops. So it's not a 1-for-1. But seeing this means that they're trying to take it over, which also means that credit card interest rates are up, car loan interest rates are up, HELOC interest rates are up. The prime rate is 7.75 right now. So talking to somebody about pulling money from their HELOC has to be a very strategic conversation, not a flippant one like it's been for years, where I had clients that had hundreds of thousands of dollars out on their HELOC. That is not safety right now. And then we've been talking about that for a long time. January existing home sales, we talked about that, fell for the 12th straight month. I don't think that has anything to do with demand. I think it has to do with inventory. Inventory is below 1 million nationwide. This is not an us problem. This is a we problem. It is everybody in the United States has an inventory right now. There's only 1.5 months of inventory nationwide. New listings to 2023 were just below any other year. We're not keeping up with the inventory. Housing starts, interestingly enough, we talked about housing starts and completions last week. But this report actually just came out that built for rent was higher in the housing starts than built for own. That scares the crap out of me. I'm just going to tell you that. So when I see that we already have lower housing start numbers, we already see lower permit numbers, and now when I see that the actual starts are more for buying for rent than to own, we are going to have an inventory problem. If you have grandchildren, consider buying them a home now. It is going to become a problem, and I'm not kidding. Right. So as we see this, until we see generation and birth rates go down, and those kids today are 13 is when we start to see the birth rates going down. So we still have many years, 2 decades of home buying demand. And depending on your age, I don't know that I'm going to see that. So investors, interesting, Redfin came out with a report showing that investors were buying half as many homes than a year ago. Duh, like, come on. It's hard to cash flow. Prices are up. Interest rates are up. They're not going away. They're just waiting for opportunity. Now, the commercial market is a totally different thing because a lot of them have to refinance right now their short-term loans when interest rates are higher. This is not that. This is the residential market. They're just waiting for more opportunities to come on. And interestingly enough, at Denver, 15.4% were still sold to investors. First-time home buyers bought more actually than they did last year, and cash buyers are up a little bit. So there's definitely some demand. People who have cash are taking advantage of this. There's not as much interest rates. So here's some happy news. What time is it? I got 6 minutes to go through the happy news. I leave the best for last. So FHA just came out with some announcements and I blasted this. We did a short form video. I posted it and I wanted to go through the numbers. I'm going to show you some charts. It's going to be too small for you to record, but absorb kind of the context. You can grab the slide deck, the entire slide deck on our Agent Ignite Facebook group. If you're not a member, you're missing the boat. So the FHA changes the upfront mortgage insurance. You guys probably know this, the upfront mortgage insurance, and then there's a monthly mortgage insurance. So there's two buckets. The upfront mortgage insurance is hefty. It's 1.75. That didn't change at all. And that's 1.75% of the loan, and it gets rolled into the loan. It is not cash that they have to pay at closing. So that amount stayed the same. And in this case, if you put 3.5% down on an FHA, $10,000 is going to be added to your loan balance. That's the same. Didn't change at all. What changed is the monthly mortgage insurance. Across the board, it dropped 30 bips. So that kind of difference can be a difference of $150 on a $700,000 loan, which adds up. It's $1,800 over the course of a year. Over the course of 5 years, it's $9,000. This is money that is out of their pocket every month when they're writing their mortgage payment. So when you write your mortgage payment on an FHA loan, you have your principal and interest, taxes and insurance, and then you have that mortgage insurance, right? And that mortgage insurance was heavy. It had just been raised not too long ago, and they've got a ton of money. And I said this at the end of last year, I said, look for FHA to come down. We have an administration that is so pro first-time home buyer that if he doesn't do it, I would be absolutely shocked. So in him doing this, of course, Biden is taking all of the opportunity to say that we're making these changes. And of course, I mean, that money has been sitting there for a long time, but give him the kudos, doesn't matter. I like the idea that we just dropped our monthly payment by $150 a month, which increases affordability. So give or take, it's not exact, but for every $10,000 in purchase price, you're looking at about $50 a month in payment. Again, that is so broad stroke. But if that gives me another $30,000 to play with, does that just tip me over into the next price bucket? Does that give me a little bit more advantage when I'm going in and negotiating or having to go in over asking? So think about that as a strategic advantage when you're working with your buyers to say, I know you just talked to your lender about this. Let's go rework the numbers. These changes go into effect on March 20th, but that is a date that we have to sell that loan to. So we are actually closing them. Anything closed after March 1st, OneTrust is going to hold that loan, and then we're going to sell it to HUD after the March 20th date. So it's not going to be based on usually they're based on when you get the FHA case number. This one's a little bit different. So this is a huge win. And then it's a little bit different for 15 years. So we don't do a ton of 15-year FHA loans, but I went ahead and included that chart. If you wanted to download it later, you can take a look at that. And then streamline refinances are the same thing. So if you did get an FHA loan, I would not go run to the lender right now, or to me more specifically, let's be honest. I would not come knocking on my door ready to refinance today, not with the interest rates the way they are, but I would know that as soon as interest rates do drop, if you got an FHA loan in the last 5 years, you actually get some of that upfront mortgage insurance back to apply to your closing costs. And then you set up a new loan with this lower mortgage insurance. Then if you can't move it into a conventional loan, if you don't have enough equity, this is the option, because we've been talking about a lot of people at higher interest rates aren't going to have enough equity to be able to refinance when interest rates drop. It might be worth looking at if they move over to FHA, especially if they have mortgage insurance anyway. So it certainly couldn't hurt to look at the numbers. VA also is rolling out a change, and this is all closings after April 7th. They announced this and it was really quiet. Nobody took ownership for this one. Not sure why, because I really like it. So they actually dropped their upfront funding fee. Remember, there's no monthly mortgage insurance for VA. but they dropped their upfront funding fee, saving people $900 to $1,800. And that gets rolled into the loan. So it's going to help them on their monthly payment. Their monthly payment will go down because their loan amount is lower. Fannie and Freddie also made some changes. I've got a minute left, so we're probably going to run a minute over for those of you on Zoom and online. But just so you know, I do want to make sure that I show you these. And again, you can grab the PowerPoint presentations and we'll talk about them more. And if you're not here in the room, I'm sorry. So what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac did, now they did this, they announced it about a month ago, a couple weeks ago. I already brought this up, but I wanted to package it all together. So we talked about the FHA changes dropping the mortgage insurance. We talked about the VA dropping their upfront fee. And now Fannie and Freddie, who did this a couple weeks ago, this red band right here is the most expensive band. They are paying for everybody else, right? So if you're putting 20% down and you have a great credit score, you're paying the most. Your LLPAs, your loan level price adjustments, went up, which will push your interest rates up. High balance, they got totally hosed. The high balance adjustments went way up. This is a conversation you guys need to know, that you've got your clients back, that your client's working with a lender that knows how to negotiate. If I'm really close to a conforming loan limit and I'm not asking you to bring more money down, I'm not doing my job. Because if you're sitting in that high balance loan limit, so the United States has a loan limit, and then the counties, which are more expensive, Denver and all the surrounding counties are part of that, have high balance loan limits. So I'm either going to take all of our clients jumbo, or we're going to put a little bit more down, or we're going to look at first and second options. So we're going to be looking at all the opportunities for every single one of our clients. But these guys with the lowest credit score and the least amount down got the biggest benefit from the changes in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which totally goes in line with Biden's homeownership project and bringing the opportunity. So these guys in the middle are paying for it. Freddie Mac also has a Borrow Smart program. So giving buyers up to $2,500 towards their closing costs, and they don't have to do anything for this other than take an online class and get the $2,500 based on their income bracket. So a lot of people in Denver have the higher incomes. They might not be able to get this kind of credit, but it's just simply a matter of running automated underwriting and seeing if they can get it. And then we just raised our ITINs. We only require 20% down where we were 25% down. I know there's a couple different options. Last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to show that QR code. I've been seeing a number of agents sending out and getting personalized websites with this Home Funded, which is a CMG product, which is a different lender, which I just wanted to double click on this. This is a crowdfunding down payment program, right? So it's like you can put it out online and you can get crowdfunding if you want other people to put money into your bank account. This is nothing more than going out and crowdsourcing funds, because in the fine print, which they don't show you, is they just simply say the money needs to be moved over to your account more than 60 days prior to close. Anybody and everybody can do that. Every loan can do that because we only require 2 months of bank statements. So the idea that it's a program around it, I just wanted to double click so that you're aware that if they say, hey, I found this program, I can do this crowdfunding, interesting. It's an interesting marketing plan, but anybody. So if you have the opportunity to get funds, gift funds, crowdfunding funds, any of those things, just know, just as a matter of awareness, that anybody can do that, and you get money for, you can find it in the street, put it in your bank account, wait 2 months, and then do a loan application. And that's the deal. So that was just more for education purposes. All right, so here's the QR code for the March 16th mastermind. We ran 3 minutes over. I'm gonna make sure that I leave that up there for the guys online. And then with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen in a second. And this was such a pleasure. Yes, a little late, but I'm here.
No, we're good.
I love it. Well, thank you guys online for joining us today. Always a pleasure. So you can rewatch this. It's on Zoom. It's on Facebook. I know, Megan, you'll be sending out your slides later today.
Yep, about 1 o'clock today, before the cat has its vet appointment.
Okay. Super important how we've rearranged our timeline.
Yes.
And then we'll, of course, send out our email and we'll post everything in the Agent Ignite Facebook group. You guys have a great rest of your day, a fantastic weekend. Know that we're working. I might be in New York, but my team is working. And I know that you're looking to support folks on Monday morning. Yes, yes. All right. Well, you guys have a great day. And now we get to start the mastermind. Very exciting. I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to close this down.